Up next, I want to talk to you about working with font icons. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you go into, let's say, InDesign or some program like that, and let's suppose you want to use like a copyright symbol. Well, you can use a Unicode character or some kind of character to type it in, and you get a copyright symbol, right? Well, that's kind of like what a font icon is. If you look up in the upper right corner of my website, you're going to see I've got the Twitter, the Google, the this, the email. These are actually part of a font that we can use. Now, font icons have grown quite a bit in the past few years here, and they're pretty amazing because it's text. This is actually selectable text. It's something that you can work with, which means that we can use CSS to apply different formatting to it, do a lot of different things to it. We can scale it. It's crisp and clean. You can do sizing to it and a lot of really amazing things you can do. What we are going to do, let me bounce over just to show you, is we are going to do something like you see on my site there where we actually have a couple of icons that, right up over here, really simple stuff, but you can take this to the nth degree. You can do all sorts of things with it. Now, to get this to happen, what we need is some kind of font. So we're going to basically be using a font that we host, okay? So, or let's say some other company like Typekit or something like that hosts. What I want you to do is if you go into your lessons folder, week 1, into icon fonts, you'll see that we have a sites.txt. Now, by the way, the final, if you want to see, hold on, that beautiful page, that's actually right there, index final. You can go in there, and I even have the fonts in there if you want to take a look. What I want you to do is open up the sites.txt file, and I've got tons of resources in here, and one of the fonts that I use all the time is called Genericons. So what I want you to do is copy that URL. You can also just go to a browser and go to genericons.com. It's pretty simple. And you'll see what I see. You'll see something like this. Now, this website these are free, open. You can use them for commercial projects, different things like that. And you'll see that these are the icons you get. Pretty cool. Pretty much all the social media you could think of, even like CodePen and all these out here, even like a little camera and, just some pretty cool stuff. You can these, and I'm not going to get too far ahead of myself, but you can even layer these on top of each other to have some different things happen. But so the idea here is that we are going to download the font. Now, just one step back, you'll see that there are tons of other example fonts that I have in here you can go grab. You got to check and make sure that the licensing permits you to use them in commercial projects if you are. There is even some, this is probably the coolest thing. This test on CSStricks.com, I'm going to show this to you. You don't have to go here, but I'm going to go in there, copy that, go back to the browser, and just paste it in. And check this out. This is pretty cool. See, the CSS Tricks website actually put down why icon fonts are awesome. And you got a little slider here and all sorts of things. You can change the size, crisp and clean, if you notice that. Change the color. This is RGB. It's a font. You can do a lot of different things to it. You can add shadow if you want, drop shadow, different things like that. You can do some really neat things. You can have knockouts, have all kinds of things. And since it is a font, it works in a lot of different browsers. Down here, he also gives you a couple ways to use these, a couple ways you can actually use these, which is pretty cool, to be honest, pretty useful. A lot of us are going to use what's called before. So we're going to say, let's say we have a link. We're going to say before it, let's put in this font icon and then use it that way. But we can also use span tags. You can use a div. There's tons of ways to get this done. Okay. What I want you to do is go to Genericons website, and you'll see that we have copy CSS, and we've got all kinds of stuff we can work with here. Just come over here, click on download. Should download it for you, hopefully. Maybe. Oh, there we go. Okay, now I'm going to go find that zip, and you're going to see that there's mine. Open up the zip. You'll see an example. This is an HTML5 that has it in it. And what we really need is we need this folder called font. If you are currently using hosted fonts in your website, you can take these fonts, these 4, and add it to that fonts folder if you've got one. This one right here is an OpenType font. You can use this to work with the font in Photoshop and other programs to design with, which is pretty sweet. So what I want you to do is take the font folder Let me hide a few things here so it looks a little bit easier. And let's drag it into the icon fonts folder. Okay, there we go. Now, like I said, in your site, normally you're either going to already have a font folder or you're going to create one. Put it in there. Now you're going to see we have an example and we also have the CSS. We need to grab the CSS here to make it easy on us. So what I want you to do is we're going to open up that CSS file in some kind of web editor. If I double click on it, it's going to open it for me in Sublime Text. The reason why we're going to open this is because we pretty much need this. Okay, we're going to copy paste a bunch of stuff. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. The next step is to come back to your folder and you're going to see index start. Let's open that up. So open that up in an editor, not in your browser. So open it up in some kind of like Dreamweaver, Sublime Text, whatever, and you'll see the web page. It's a really stupid, simple web page. Now, I'm going to save mine just so that I don't overwrite the start. I'll just call it working. You guys stay where you're at. Don't worry, you don't have to do that. Okay. Now, you're going to see in this HTML file, this is our web page, obviously. Here's the CSS, and we're going to put it internal to the document. Normally, you would put this in your style sheet, but I just want you to be able to see it all in one document. We also have a navigation. If you look down here, we've got a nav. In the nav, I've got a couple links with some blank spaces in there. Now, we don't have to do this. These links could be divs that you put the font icon in. There's a million ways we could do this. What we are going to do is we're going to, first of all, take the font or grab the font and attach it to the document. So what I want you to do is go back to that genericicons.css file that you opened. Right here, and check this out, font was generated by Font Squirrel. That's really, really important. Grab the @font face here. So you're going to see these two rules right here. Go ahead and copy those. So I'm going to copy those and then go back over to the HTML file. There it is right there. And in the CSS right there, we're just going to paste. So I'm going to paste it. Now, it's going to look a little different, okay? It might not for you, but I have text wrap turned on. If you look, I'm going to scroll all the way up here. This is crazy. You're going to see that it's actually going in and saying, okay, well, here's the base 64 of this font, which is pretty much all the code. Okay, just had a little crash there, but that's fine. We're back. Anyway, had to kind of rearrange things so the screen will look a little different too, but that's totally fine. We're still where we're at. So to keep talking here, you're going to see that all of this code up here is essentially pointing to the fonts that we downloaded. So if you notice, there's going to be a bunch of links that go to like a TTF file, SVG file, etc. This needs to work. So you're going to see right here that it's saying, okay, go into a font folder and go find this font. If you go back to your folder, there's the page right there, index start. Mine's working, don't worry. Go into the font folder and find the font. So we got to make sure that those links work. So just copying and pasting isn't going to cut it. You got to make sure all those are on there. Now, if we go back to the genericicons.css, we just grabbed the linking to the fonts. So that's saying, okay, go grab these fonts. And it's putting the generic family name in there so that we can call that in our styling. The next thing we need to do, scroll down a little bit, you're going to see there's at least two more things here. You're going to see Genericon as a class and Genericon down here. These are IE7 and IE6 hacks. If you don't care about IE7 and IE6, leave this stuff out. I'm going to use it. I don't care. So copy this stuff. These are basically two classes. Go back over. After the CSS that you pasted up here, go ahead and paste them right here. There we go. Now I'm just cleaning up a little space here. Now what we need to do is we've kind of got it set up to where we've got the fonts linked. We've got a style, which is going to go in and apply the font family called Genericons. It's going to set a font size and a height size and all that kind of stuff we can work with. The next thing we need to do is we need to actually add the icons we want. Now, if I scroll down a bit, you're going to see that we've got two links down here. One is for Twitter and one's for YouTube. And these are my Twitter and YouTube channels. You can do whatever you want, obviously, as a link. But what we're going to do is we're going to assign classes to each one of these. Now, the first class we're going to assign is for the Genericon. Okay? Now, Genericon is going to go in and say, all right, let's do X, Y, Z. So if I scroll down a little bit, go to class, type in Genericon. I think I got it right. And then do the same thing here. I copy that, go to class Genericon. Nice. what's going to happen here is it's going to apply the font called Genericon to the link itself. Now we have an empty space in there basically, so it's not really going to do too much for us, if you will. What we need to do is we need to add the actual, I guess you could say, code to tell it which character to put in there. That's what we're going to go over to genericicons.css for. Scroll down a bit, and you're going to see that they've got all the CSS in here for the different icons that we have. You've got all the social media icons right here. So if you scroll down a little bit, you're going to see Twitter, and we also need, what else do we need? YouTube. So what I want you to do is select this. This is just a class. It's called Genericon Twitter, before, and it's going to use this thing called content to put in the correct character for it. So copy the Twitter one. Whichever one you want to use, you copy. Go back over to your page, and in the styling after what we pasted, paste it there. Go back. Let's grab the YouTube one. Copy. Paste. So that's going to put the correct character out there. Now, don't worry. I'm going to explain exactly what this does. What you need to do now is you need to apply this class, Generic Icon Twitter and Generic Icon YouTube, to whatever you want the character to show up in. So for, let's see, Twitter, we're going to apply the class right here. So put a space, make sure there's a space, and paste. And then for the next one, I'm going to copy right here. Keep it simple. Copy, right down here, space, paste, YouTube. There we go. Now, it's kind of interesting, but we're using these before, these pseudo classes to say we can use before or after. Before is saying, let's apply content called this, and it's going to go find the actual, character, which is the generic icon, Genericon rather. I keep saying that, and apply it right to that space that we put in there. So go ahead and save the file. Go back over to your browser, and I'm going to see if I can find it here. I'm going to go open it up. So go to your browser and open up the file. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do it this way. This is a little bit easier. Sorry. You're probably on index starting. I got working. I'm going to go drag it to my browser, open it in my browser, and take a look at it. And you should see what we get. Bing, bing. Look at that. Kind of cool. Now, the problem is it's really small. It's blue. There's some things we need to do, okay? That actually rhymed. That's awesome. Go back over to your web page. Now, like I said, there are a lot of ways we can apply these. The before pseudo class is one special way we get it done. If you take a look up here, you're going to see that we have this Genericon class that we applied. The width, the height, and the font size is what we need to change here. So I want to crank up the font size, let's say to 40. And we're going to make the width and height, doesn't exactly have to be the same. But you got to do a little trial, a little test. And in here, after font size, let's say, we're going to do a little color change. So color, and you can do whatever you want. Dark gray. Go back out to the browser, save the page, and refresh, and you'll see it happen. There we go. If we decide we want to put spacing between them, we can change the width on each. We can add margin. We can do tons of stuff. These are inline blocks, so they can be treated as such. If we decided, this is something that to keep into consideration here, if we decided to actually have the word, let's say, Twitter, instead of just a space, suppose we did this. Come into the anchor tag here and just type in Twitter. I'm going to save that and go take a look at it in the browser. And you're going to see what it does. It's actually using the Genericon font to apply to that, which I'm not in love with. But what we could do is we could then, because of the width and the height on this, it's kind of cutting it off. This is overflow. We'd have to change the width and do different things to it, but you could have content in the link and still have the generic icon before, the Genericon before. So there's just several ways to get that done. I put the non-breaking space, the MBSP, back in there. And you really don't have to put a non-breaking space. I've seen it where divs, you make a div with this whole thing instead of a link, and you just make a blank div and you put a size on it and you're ready to go. Now, if you want to get a little bit fancier, you could do something like this. You could add a hover to it. So we could say, okay, Genericon, hover. Now I'm doing the generic one, Genericon, get it? Color, and then I'll do like a red. Something like that. and then go test it out and see, bang, bang. We could apply transitions. We could do tons of stuff to this if we want to, but these are going to stay nice and crisp and clean and do all sorts of things for us. So that's working with generic icons. Don't forget there are a lot of other types of icon fonts you can use. And just one last thing, let me go back. If you go back to the icon fonts folder, go to that sites.txt file, open that up again. You're going to see that if you want to add effects to these, this Tympanus website's awesome. I think it's great. If you go to this cool website here, I'm going to copy this and go to a browser and paste it in. It's going to scroll down to set 4, I think. It's got the set 4 on the URL, but that's fine. You'll see that these are actually icon fonts, and when you hover over, you get some really cool hover effects. Check these out. You can, if you want to dig in here, you can. There's tons of these you can work with and see how they work. Don't forget, in one of the first videos, I talked about working with the developer tools. So if I go to developer tool and I click on one of these, let me scroll down a bit so you can see it. Now, of course, the header is not movable. You can actually see before they put the actual content in there, and they're doing some different things to get it to work. So if I go click on the link, we'll see things like, where are we at here? Box sizing, font sizing, blah, blah, blah. Transform. They're actually using what's called a transform to get it to scale and do different things. There's a lot of stuff going on here, basically. They have a before and after going on. These are pretty fancy, but you can grab the CSS if you want to and apply it to your own stuff. These are phenomenal. I love these. Anyway, I'll stop. Last thing to take a look at. Lots of great things you can do with these.